Zach, let's wrap up with some individual standouts, and I'll start because I mentioned him earlier. This UCLA offensive line hasn't been amazing. Derrick Harmon has. And I think Derrick Harmon is going to have a monster game. It might not show up in the stat sheet. He might not have 3 sacks and 2 other TFLs. I think Derrick Harmon has been the most disruptive player for Oregon defensively this year since transferring in from Michigan State. I think he keeps that rolling here. He's fresh off the bye week. UCLA did not have a bye a week ago. They were in Baton Rouge, crashing and banging with the Tigers and whatnot in what was a good competitive football game. But that's the first guy that I look at and say, boy, he could be in for a monster day. I wouldn't be surprised if he's got multiple sacks, multiple TFLs, or if he's just making life uncomfortable for Ethan Garbers in the pocket.
I would say for UCLA, he's probably not going to dominate the game, but I think his effectiveness can set the tone. Jay Tuia, right? This is a guy who was in the portal. Deshaun Foster and the Bruins, they decided to bring him back. They got the NIL, offered him. He was going to Texas, right? And maybe life would be better if he was at Texas for him personally. But he comes back to UCLA to be the man. This is a D-line that's a bit banged up, doesn't have the talent it has last year. Former Duckwet Keanu Williams, he's out for the year. That was announced this week. He didn't even play in the LSU game. There's a few transfers for UCLA in the D-line that have not played. I'm not sure that's going to make up for the lack of ability to rush the passer, but I would think Jay Tuia is someone who can set the tone for the Bruins if they're going to make some noise defensively. He might not blow up the stat sheet, but I think his ability to clog up the middle could be important for UCLA in this one.
There's been a strange connection roster-wise between these two programs. You, of course, have the Dante Moore factor where he flips from Oregon to UCLA and then transfers to Oregon this past offseason. But UCLA's got Maliki Matavao, Keanu Williams. I was this close to saying Keanu Reeves. This close. I was right.
Right.
I was right there, and I saved it at the last moment.
The question
Davies,
is which Keanu Reeves movie comes out of your head
John
first?
Wick. John Wick, 100%. Any of them. Like, pick anyone. I love the most recent one. I thought it was fantastic. But Jalen Davies, former Oregon cornerback once upon a time, also still in that UCLA secondary, who was also there the last time these teams played in 2022. But I want to go to that position group because Dylan Gabriel has been phenomenal this year. He's completing over 80% of his passes. I don't think that holds up over the course of 12 games, but certainly I said coming into the year he should be at least a 70% completion guy. He looks well on his way. He's spreading the ball around like Rajon Rondo and the OG Boston Celtics, who were a great NBA 2K team back in 2K10. I think that he is doing such a great job of reading what the defense is giving him and taking it while also being able to push the ball down the field. And sometimes it's Trayshawn Holden, sometimes it's Evan Stewart, sometimes it's Tez Johnson. How do you feel about UCLA secondary? Because I look at this game and say, this can happen any week, but Tez Johnson feels like he's got a 9-catch, 120-yard, 2-touchdown game in him.
Yeah, I mean, I think you got multiple guys who could be starting for UCLA in the secondary, former Oregon Duck players. Another DB just went down for the year, Kanye Clark for UCLA. So you got 2 defensive starters for UCLA out for the year announced this week by the head coach. And so that's a unit that doesn't have a lot of depth. It's banged up. And I think all you have to do is go look at the tape from Nussmeier from LSU. Started off a little sluggish, but then he took what was given in front of him, right? Maybe like a Dylan Gabriel, although throws it from the right side. And then when he threw an excellent deep ball, beat a UCLA DB down the field. And if UCLA generates no pressure, regardless of if I'm going to say I have my UCLA bias on, and I don't think this defense is as bad as the numbers say. I don't believe they are, but they can't rush the passer. I can't even say passer, right? But passer, here we go. If you're
I wasn't going to say anything, but that was the second time.
Yeah. But if Dylan Gabriel's given as much time to throw, the secondary is on an island. It's happened this way every time. 3rd and long for Curtis Rourke in Indiana. For Nussmeier, all this time to throw. Even Shager at times in the run and shoot. I do believe in the DBs, but they can't stand there for more than 5 to 6 seconds time and time again. If Oregon's offensive line doesn't run into each other 13 times in a row, I just don't think they'll hold up over the course of the game, especially when it comes to 3rd and long. UCLA is the worst in the country, I'm pretty sure, if not one of the worst, at defending 3rd downs and the conversion rates. They're one of the worst defenses because they can't rush the quarterback. and give him any pressure. So 3rd and 8 is a comfortable down, regardless of who's throwing the football.
Dylan Gabriel against Oregon State was supremely comfortable. And he was, wait for it, really, really good. If UCLA cannot get pressure on Dylan Gabriel, Bruins fans will probably get tired of watching the southpaw spin it, and he can really throw a nice, tight spiral, deliverable, and catchable football. I think that he's been sensational this year, and his best game, I don't think it was the Idaho game necessarily. He's 41 of 49 for 380 and 2 touchdowns, but it was a lot of short passes, and he didn't look fully settled in. But he got settled against Oregon State because he had the time to throw. And I think Oregon, especially with the Matthew Bedford injury that he aggravated during the bye week, that was the Indiana transfer at offensive guard. Oregon's going to have the same starting offensive line as they did against Oregon State. I can't see them changing that. It'll be Connerly, it will be Strother, it will be Poncho, it will be Harper, and it'll be Cornelius from left to right. And that unit did not allow Gabriel to get sacked and ran for 7.5 yards a carry. And I want to close with this. Oregon's offense is at its best over the last couple of years when it's balanced and they can do a little play action, but when they can get Jordan James involved. We saw Dylan Gabriel break a big run against Oregon State on a speed option play. What's the state of this UCLA defensive line and the linebacking unit as well to stop the run? Because that's another way that Oregon can make this a really long game, is they could control the ball and control the tempo of the game in any way that they want.
If UCLA can't penetrate the Oregon O-line, that will tell the story. You'll know the first couple of drives. If Oregon has as much time to throw, just dominate the trenches, if they can do what they want as well, it'd be brutal. The linebacking unit, UCLA has the most depth in the linebacker room. They did miss longtime Bruin, former Alabama Crimson Tide member of a national championship team in Ale Cajo. He didn't play, but he's been injured almost his entire career, so you can't rely on his injury status. So that's like 3 or 4 starters UCLA's been down on defense this last week. I don't think that makes a difference whether they beat LSU or not, let alone Indiana. But they're getting beat up. Linebacker, K. Madrano, he's a stud, right? Femi Oladejo from Cal. You've got guys who have been there and made plays. I'm very confident with the linebackers. They just get beat up. This team does when it comes to the O-line and the D-line. And if Oregon controls those, regardless of if Garbers has the best Heisman moments, regardless of if the DB makes the craziest...
Ethan Garbers and Heisman. I didn't know you could put those things in the same sentence.
I can. Let me go with Travis Hunter-like DB one-handed interception if UCLA's corners the hex of play. But again, it's repeatability and consistency. And the Lions have not had that this year. So I can look at the secondary, the talent, the skill positions. UCLA, maybe not 1 through 10 all the way down the depth chart, but they have talent there. It's what they've been lacking and what all the Big Ten media has been saying. These teams can't handle the strength other than Oregon. And it's led up to what UCLA struggled with this year.
Zach, do you have a score prediction? I don't. I'm going to save that for my Friday show, but if you've got one, you may drop one. I'm not going to force you to, but if you got a vibe, go for it. I think we both like Oregon to win the game. It's just a matter of what score.
I think the question is how many quarters goes by before people might turn it off or think it's not competitive. I think we can get this game into the third quarter thinking it's competitive. How deep in the third quarter and how big that lead is, it's one thing. I think the Bruins can put in 2 quarters and make this fun. Score, any Oregon team, it seems like it can be close and then you're losing by 30, right? It can happen in a blink of an eye, and I think that can happen in this one as well.